Welcome back to this series of lessons about software. In this lesson, we'll look at the different methodologies used for software development. So in this lesson, we'll briefly discuss what software development means and the key features of the software industry that make software development a very special kind of creative process that needs careful management. We'll look at the oldest development methodology, the Waterfall method, and we'll briefly review some other methods which we'll go into in more detail in future lessons. Software development means producing software that is ready to go to market, in other words, to be used by users, purchased, downloaded. Programming is part of that process, so that's actually writing the code. In the modern age, most programming is done by a team of coders working together, and it's often done in a commercial context where the aim is to produce software which can be offered for sale. As I say, coding is part of a larger process, so as well as coding, there'd be a process of planning what the software is going to look like, designing it in more detail, actually writing the code, testing the code, which is a profession in its own right, and then amending and improving it, partly as a result of the test process and partly because we think of new features. So you can see that the programmer is part of a larger process. All companies in any field want to sell their products. They want to reduce the cost to them of producing that product, but they want to make their customers happy so that they come back, they keep buying the product, they're happy to pay the price, whatever price it's set at. Companies want to do better than rival companies that are doing producing similar products, and on the whole, companies want to get a good reputation for quality. So overall, these are motives, these are typical commercial motives that influence private companies. Now, those things I've just said about producing quality products that will sell at a good price, this applies to any company. So a company making pizzas or a company making components for the car industry, they have those goals. Software has all those goals, but it has some special features that influence the process of creating and producing the product. One feature of the software industry is that products are created and sent to customers in a very rapid turnaround. There's typically a very short deadline, and games, for instance, new versions are produced very rapidly, often in response to vocal feedback from customers, from the audience who've got strong preferences. There are new games coming around all the time, so the old games have to keep up with that competition. And compared to other products like, as I say, car components or pizzas, it's very easy for buyers to make illegal copies instead of paying for the product. Comparatively easy. All of these features of software influence the way that the product is developed. In these series of lessons, I'm going to look at 5 different methods which are listed on the screen at the moment: Waterfall, Agile, Extreme, Spiral and RAD. We're going to start by looking at the Waterfall method. The Waterfall design methodology is a very traditional, you could even say old-fashioned method. It's slow and steady but comparatively safe. It's mainly used nowadays with large, non-urgent software development tasks, and it may be adopted for a very high-risk project where it's important to go very slow and steady. So in the Waterfall method, those different stages of software development that I've just described to you follow on each other in a series, and the output of each stage feeds into the next stage. I found this picture online. If you search, do a Google image search for the waterfall method, and you'll see a lot of variations with different names for the stages, but the general principle holds that we break the process down into quite separate stages which are kept apart from each other, and we only begin one stage. For instance, the purple block here, making the software, we only start that when the previous stages are completed and signed off. In practice, the waterfall model in that form is not generally used because there's a continuous life cycle of software development. So if you can imagine the two ends of the waterfall joined together to make a circle, and we call that the software development life cycle. So this process of designing, writing the code, testing and implementing it will go on in a continuous cycle where improvements are always being developed. However, if we did use the traditional waterfall model, our development would be a single process where each stage is gone through in order. At the end of the process, we would have a product that was ready to go to market, and rather than go back to the top of the waterfall and start it all over again, software developers generally try to maintain the software. That is, they'll make changes to the software to keep it going for as long as possible, and where possible they'll avoid making changes altogether. And another key feature of the waterfall model is that you'll have noticed in those stages there isn't really much input from the user until perhaps the very end when they get the product. And this is another reason why we would call the waterfall quite an old-fashioned model of software development. Modern methods of software development tend to be more iterative. That is, they repeat over and over again more often. They're very fast. They get products out more quickly than the old-fashioned methods, and they're very much responsive to the customer's feedback. And you'll be familiar with that in any software that you buy. Updates are coming along all the time as it changes and grows, very often very rapidly. There are 4 iterative methods that we're going to look at. Agile and XP are usually used for very fast and frequent updates, and Spiral and Rad are more structured methods. I'll go through them in more detail in further lessons. So we choose a method based on whether we want frequent updates or a less risky, more controlled process. So to recap, I just talked about what software development is and how it's slightly different from other types of product development and creation. I talked about perhaps the original methodology, the oldest methodology, the waterfall method, which is slow, steady, and produces a product which will then not be updated very frequently, compared to the iterative methods of modern software development, where software is constantly being changed and upgraded. Here's an exam question for you to tackle. It's only 5 marks, so I wouldn't expect you to be writing for very long on this. Modern software development teams rarely employ the waterfall model. Can you think of any reasons why not? If you can write for about 5 minutes on this and show understanding and apply it and evaluate it, and I'll have a look. If you're my student, I'll have a look at your result. Okay, so in the next lesson, we'll start looking more at the iterative development processes. Bye for now.